They are great gilded helms, relics of the First Age, known as an example of the great craftsmanship of their people. To enemies, they were terrible to look upon, and to their wearers, they were the greatest defense against the dreaded dragons. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the great Dwarf-masks and the Dragon-helm of Dor-lómin. While the great Dragon-helm would be the most famous of Dwarf-masks, it was far from the only. One of the most notable moments for these special helms of the dwarves comes from the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. These dwarves come from Belegost in the Blue Mountains and join with the sons of Feanor in the eastern offensive against Morgoth. And there, among the hordes of orcs, wolves, and balrogs, would be Glaurung and his fellow dragons. After the alliance is betrayed by one of the groups of Easterlings, the battle goes ill, and it is here that we find the dwarves in their finest moment. Last of all the eastern force to stand firm were the dwarves of Belegost, and thus they won renown. For the Naugrim withstood fire more heartily than either elves or men, and it was their custom moreover to wear great masks in battle, hideous to look upon, and those stood them in good stead against the dragons. Better than any elf or man, the dwarves are able to withstand the fires of the dragons, thanks to their iron masks. In an effort to quell the fierce dwarves, Glaurung would trample their lord, Azaghal. However, the dwarf leader plunges a dagger into Glaurung's stomach, forcing him to flee in pain, and his dragon kindred flee in dismay after him. Azaghal dies after the fateful act, and his body is borne from the battlefield by the dwarves, who sing a funeral dirge in their deep voices. While there is still battle taking place, we are told that so fierce is the very sight of the dwarves, presumably still in their dwarf masks, that no foe dared to approach them, and the dwarves gave heed to none. But what was it about these dwarf masks that made them so special? Was it just the material they were made with, or perhaps there is something greater at work? For clues, we'll look at the most famous example of a dwarf mask, the Dragon-helm of Dor-lómin. The Dragon-helm actually predates the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. It is made by the great smith Telkar, soon after the year 260 of the First Age. For this is the year that Glaurung first came out of Angband and was revealed to the world. Though notably this was a rash act by the dragon himself, and done against Morgoth's wishes. The dragon, who was still in his youth, is quickly humbled by the arrows of the elves and retreats to his master. In mockery of this defeat, and in defiance of Morgoth, Telkar puts atop a great dwarf helm a gilded image of Glaurung himself. Thus, the Dragon-helm is born. However, it would be some time before it would come to Dor-lómin. The helm would be given by Telkar of Nógrad to none other than Lord Azaghal of Belegost, and for a time it would belong to Azaghal, until the dwarf lord would find himself waylaid by orcs. Azaghal's company is traveling on the Dwarf Road, a trade route they used with the elves, when they are attacked. Thankfully, Maedhros, one of the sons of Feanor, intervenes and saves Azaghal's life. In thanks, Azaghal gifts Maedhros the great Dragon-helm. Maedhros would in turn give the helm to Fingon, who led the elves in the act of driving Glaurung back to Angband. Thus, the Dragon-helm makes its way from the east of Beleriand to the west, now residing in the house of the High King Fingolfin in Hithlum. Finally, in 416 of the First Age, well over 150 years after its creation, the Dragon-helm would come into the hands of men. For it is in this year that Fingolfin would grant lordship of his land of Dor-lómin to Hador. the namesake for one of the three great houses of the Edain. With the appointment, Fingon gives the helmet to Hador, that it may be an heirloom of his mighty house. Thus the helm earns its full name, the Dragon-helm of Dor-lómin. It is said that both Hador and his son Galdor would often wear the dragon helm in battle. This is notable for the helm was designed for dwarves, meaning it was too heavy for any elf, and for all but the most stout of men. And it is said the men of Dor-lómin would be greatly encouraged whenever they saw the massive dragon helm towering above others in battle. And this is a quality we'll see later in the helm's history as well. Eventually the helm passes to Galdor's son, Túrin, who does not often wear it, for it is said he was of shorter stature and did not wear it with ease. He also declared, "I would rather look on my foes with my true face." After Húrin's capture, in the very same battle as Azaghal's demise, the helm would be sent by Húrin's wife Morwen, along with her own son, to the elven king Thingol of Doriath for safekeeping. Most precious of these was the son of Morwen, but we see Thingol would treat the dragon helm with incredible respect. Now Thingol had in Menegroth deep armories filled with great wealth of weapons, metal wrought like fish's mail, and shining like water in the moon, swords and axes, shields and helms, wrought by Telkar himself, or by his master Gamil-Zerak the Old, or by elven rites more skillful still. For some things he had received in gift that came out of Valinor, and were wrought by Feanor in his mastery, than whom no craftsman was greater in all the days of the world. Yet Thingol handed the helm of Hador as though his hoard were scanty, and he spoke courteous words, saying, "Proud were the head that bore this helm, which the sires of Túrin bore." Then a thought came to him, and he summoned Túrin, and told him that Morwen had sent to her son a mighty thing, the heirloom of his fathers. "Take now the dragon head of the north," he said, "and when the time comes, wear it well." Indeed, Túrin would grow into a mighty man, and the dragon helm would see battle once more. Tolkien describes the helm during this tale of Túrin, and hints at its incredible properties. That helm was made of gray steel adorned with gold, and on it were graven runes of victory. A power was in it that guarded any who wore it from wound or death, for the sword that hewed it was broken, and the dart that smote it sprang aside. It was wrought by Telkar, the smith of Nogrod, whose works were renowned. It had a visor, after the manner of those that the dwarves used in their forges for the shielding of their eyes. And the face of one that wore it struck fear into the hearts of all beholders, but was itself guarded from dart and fire. Upon its crest was set in defiance a gilded image of Glaurung the dragon, for it had been made soon after he first issued from the gates of Morgoth. Not only would this helm give great encouragement to the soldiers who saw it, but it seems it may have had supernatural properties, runes of victory, and a power to protect its wearer from wound or death. How much of this is superstitious tradition, and how much is truly a magic of the dwarves, we can only guess. Though one can't help but notice Túrin's success with the helm, and his struggles without it. And when Túrin did come of fighting age, Thingol allows him to join the elves fighting unceasingly upon the orcs in the north marches of Doriath. And word ran through the woods and was heard far beyond Doriath that the Dragon-helm of Dor-lómin was seen again. Then many wondered, saying, "Can the spirit of any man return from death? Or has Túrin of Hithlum escaped indeed from the pits of hell?" Wearing the dragon helm, Túrin would win renown in battle and strike fear into the hearts of Morgoth's forces. However, due to a tragic incident with ill beginnings, Túrin would depart Doriath on bad terms, leaving the helm behind. But then, when his good friend Beleg Strongbow goes in search of Túrin, he takes with him the helm. He finds Túrin at the hill of Amon-Ruth, and donning the helm once more, Túrin takes the title Gorthal, the Dread Helm. Fighting side by side once more, the mighty deeds of Túrin and Beleg lead to the entire area around Amon-Ruth to be known as Dor-Cuarthal, the land of bow and helm, for the dragon helm had once again returned. However, Túrin would soon stop wearing the dragon helm for the remainder of his days. After the tragic death of Beleg, Túrin is brought to the elven kingdom of Nargothrond. There he sets down the dragon helm, never to wear it again. However, Túrin would discover within this elf realm another piece of dwarf craftsmanship to wear. Tolkien says, "So valiant was Túrin, and so exceedingly skilled in arms, especially with sword and shield, that the elves said that he could not be slain, save by mischance, or an evil arrow from afar. Therefore they gave him dwarf mail to guard him, and in a grim mood he found in the armories a dwarf mask all gilded, and he put it on before battle, and his enemies fled before his face." Tragically, misfortune would continue to follow Túrin, and he would lead the elves in a doomed battle against none other than the dragon depicted on his family's helm. Then the warriors of Nargothrond went forth, and tall and terrible on that day looked Túrin, and the heart of the host was uplifted as he rode on the right hand of Orodreth. But far greater was the host of Morgoth than any scouts had told, and none but Túrin, defended by his dwarf mask, could withstand the approach of Glaurung. Unfortunately, Túrin is not able to drive the great serpent away as Azaghal once had. In the end, Nargothrond is sacked by the dragon, and Túrin is sent away to pursue the fate of his choice. And ultimately, his life would be one that ends with tragedy. As for the dragon helm, its ultimate fate is somewhat left a mystery. After the demise of both Túrin and Glaurung, it is said the men of Brethil recovered it from Nargothrond, and would give it to Túrin's father, Hurin, after he had been released from Morgoth's imprisonment. From there, its fate is unknown. But what of the seeming magic of this helm? As mentioned earlier, it's notable that Túrin was seemingly protected when he wore it, and only found his worst misfortune without it. As with so many things, Tolkien had developed the concept of this artifact and tweaked it over many years. And in one of his early drafts for this story, he seems to indicate quite strongly that there was power there, saying that Telkar wrought it with runes graven of might and victory, that a magic sat there and its wearer warded from wound or death. There is no question the dragon helm is the greatest and most famous of dwarf masks, seemingly with magical power, and whose sight alone struck fear into the hearts of Morgoth's armies. As for other dwarf masks, we are not told of them beyond the First Age. We see Túrin's as well as those worn by the dwarves themselves, but could these masks have continued into the Second and Third Ages? We know that the surviving remnants of dwarves from Belegost and Nogrod would join with the dwarves of Khazad-dûm in the early Second Age. So if this knowledge survived, it would have been with Durin's folk. However, we cannot help but realize that by the Third Age, the dwarves of Erebor did not equip themselves with such masks, for the dragon Smaug successfully sacks their kingdom. Could it be that the dwarf masks simply were not as common by this point? Or perhaps the knowledge and magic of Telkar's craftsmanship was forgotten by their people, leaving them susceptible to the dreaded dragons once more. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. CCDC Red Team, Evil Chameleon, Tom de Bombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Freya Firestar, Chris and Meg Q, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Kiara Berlin, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Landry Quinn Walker, Ice Glazer, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.